Hey there, and welcome back. It's Ann Pearson, and I've got lots of exciting stuff going on behind the scenes, including a brand new name for this podcast. But before I tell you about that, did you already notice one change when you jumped into this episode? If you've been a listener for a while, you might have noticed I took out the intro music in the section about the podcast. Why? Because I also listen to a bunch of different podcasts. And if you're like me, you just hit that 30-second fast forward for the intro part. Well, you don't have to do that anymore. If you did hit that 30-second fast forward, do the rewind because there was no intro. So no more music. I'm jumping straight into every episode. Change number 2, the name of the podcast. This is technically the first episode under the new name, The Paralegal Coach. It's going to be the Paralegal Coach podcast show with Ann Pearson. When I first launched the show back in 2021, I went with Paralegals on Fire because that phrase was supposed to mean like you're on a roll, you're crushing it, you're unstoppable. You know, the same way a baseball announcer says that pitcher is on fire. But over the years, I've realized I've had to explain one too many times how I'm not lighting paralegals on fire. That's not the kind of career coaching we're doing around here. So I thought it was time for a refresh, something that actually says what this show is about, helping you grow, get better, work smarter, and hopefully build a career that you love. So from here forward, this show will be known as the Paralegal Coach podcast show with Ann Pearson. The mission hasn't changed. The conversations haven't changed. The coaching definitely hasn't changed. What has changed, I think, is the clarity. This name reflects what we do here. Real talk, real strategies, real support to help you become indispensable. So thanks for being here with me, whether you've been listening since the start of the Paralegals on Fire days, or you're just discovering the show now under its new name. I'm excited for what's ahead, and I'm even more excited to help you thrive in your paralegal career. All right, let's get into this first episode of the Paralegal Coach podcast show. And it is episode 165 of the entire show. So we're talking about something that most paralegals will never admit out loud today. That's why I wanted to talk about it on the show. So even though you might never want to admit it out loud, but almost every single one of us has felt that moment when you stop asking questions because you're afraid of how it'll look. I can't even count the number of emails I've received over the years that start with something like, "And I didn't want to ask my attorney this because I think I should probably know it," or "I'm afraid they'll think I'm not cut out for this if I ask too many questions." And every time I read one of those messages, it breaks my heart a little bit because asking questions is not a weakness. We all know that. We've all been told that. But how do we get past that? Because even though everyone says, oh, it's not a weakness, there's never a dumb question and all that, it still is in our mind as we're trying to not ask the questions. Questions are how you grow. Questions are how you avoid mistakes and how you improve your skills. But somewhere along the line, paralegals are taught, sometimes subtly, sometimes directly, that asking too many questions makes you look inexperienced or annoying or slow. The biggest culprit I hear about from paralegals that this happens to is that sometime early in their career, they worked for an attorney who was impatient, and one question too many would result in the attorney making the paralegal feel stupid for asking the question. Then, even when that paralegal moves on to other firms, working with lots of different attorneys, gained lots of knowledge and skills, that sting from that one question 6 years ago still stays with them, whether consciously or subconsciously. So today, I want to talk about why paralegals stop asking questions and what it's costing your career when you do. All right, so reason number 1, fear of judgment. Nobody wants to look like they don't know what they're doing or that they don't belong, especially new paralegals who are trying so hard to prove that they can handle everything. Reason number 2 is fear of annoying a busy attorney. When someone's typing furiously or pacing around their office on phone calls, yeah, it feels like it's the absolute worst time to ask, hey, do you want this motion filed today or tomorrow? Reason number 3, fear of exposing a knowledge gap. This is the biggest one. You know that moment when someone references a local rule that you've never heard of and you nod along, and then you go frantically Google it later? Or even a word, right? It doesn't even have to be a local rule. Number 4, there's no safe person to ask. Sometimes you do have a coworker, but you also know that asking them could lead to judgment, maybe gossip, or that condescending, you didn't know that? None of this means that a paralegal lacks skill. It means that they're just navigating this high-pressure environment that has real consequences. Let's face it, in every practice area as a paralegal, whether it's litigation, corporate, real estate planning, all of these areas, when you do something wrong, it has real consequences. So let's talk about the hidden silence, the hidden cost, I should say, of staying silent. So the part that no one talks about, when you stop asking questions, your work becomes harder, not easier. You spend more time guessing. You redo work that could have been done right the first time. You might miss small details that then snowball into big problems. You stay anxious because you're unsure if you're doing things correctly. And your career growth slows because you're missing the why behind the work. Asking questions is a performance strategy. Think about it like that. In fact, I'm going to say that again. In fact, I'm going to add something though. Asking good questions is a performance strategy. So let's get into the teaching moment here, because I want to leave you with this episode with something that you can use today. You know me, I love a good framework or a step-by-step action plan. All right, so number 1, look for the answer first. Before you ask anything, any questions, ask yourself, have I looked for the answer myself, or am I trying to take the easy way out by asking someone else to find the answer for me? I learned a good lesson early in my paralegal career that I passed along to the new paralegals when I was a paralegal manager, and I think it worked. So I have to take you way back to the early 90s for this one. I give you the time period because back in the early 90s, we couldn't just Google the question or type it into ChatGPT. You had to go find a book that had the answer. It was a lot of work. Anyway, we were filing some type of motion or something. I can't remember what it was, but when I brought the draft to Michael, the partner I worked for, I asked what the rule was for something to do with that filing or something or another. I can't remember, but I remember what he said. He said, I don't know, Anne. What do the rules say? And I looked at him and said something like, well, I don't know. Can't you just tell me? And he said, no, you need to be able to tell me. Go find the rule and read it and understand it. I remember walking out of his office, not embarrassed for asking the question, but frustrated that I knew he knew the answer and just wouldn't tell me. Now I have to go hurry up and find the rule and see if it's the proper one to cite, which meant me doing more research. I think I actually even did that one more time early in my career. Yeah, I didn't learn the first time. And he gave me the same answer. I don't know, Anne. What do the rules say? And I knew better than to even push it with him because I just immediately remembered the first time after that second time. So I turned around and went back to my office to find the rule and I read it. I tell you that story because it's not just about learning what the court rules said. That's not what he was just trying to teach me. It was about trying to find the answer yourself, if you could, before asking someone else. It made me start to take initiative. It really, what it also did, you talk about initiative and good questions. If you think back, right? I wish I'd known this lesson back then. I didn't know this lesson until much later. But if I hadn't asked that question and he hadn't responded that way, which I thought was rude initially, right? I don't know, Anne. What do the rules say? I took kind of offense to that. But that 1 or 2 little sentences that he told me really gave me a foundation in my career on go take initiative. Find the answer yourself if you can. Here's a little side rant here. Nothing used to drive me crazier than back in the day when I used to be on Facebook. I dropped Facebook over a year ago. Best decision ever, by the way. Anyway, I would read in some of these paralegal Facebook groups where someone would post, hey, I'm in Florida and I need to serve a subpoena in West Virginia. Any West Virginia paralegals in here? I wanted to post a comment so bad that it would be easy for them to just go find the answer themselves by going to that court's website, but I didn't. I stayed out of it. When you have to go find the answer yourself, it makes you a better paralegal. So step one is to try to find the answer yourself. Now let's say that you can't find the answer, or you find it but you're unsure if it's the right answer. Step two is frame your question with some context. Instead of, do you want me to e-file this? Try, I've drafted the motion and updated the exhibit list. Before I finish, I want to confirm the filing deadline that you prefer. See, context makes you sound prepared. Instead of, hey, do you want me to e-file this? You're giving context. I've already done this. I've drafted this. This is ready to go. Before I finish, I just want to confirm, blah, blah, blah. All right, number 3, offer what you think the answer might be. Now, this is a pro move, and it can be a little scary if you think that the answer is not correct, especially, but it shows initiative. Again, not possible unless you start with step 1, right? Trying to find the answer yourself. So, based on our last case, I'm thinking we should X. Do you agree? What do you think about that? Right? You're saying you've researched it. Here's what you think it is. Do you agree? Then number 4, ask for the why when appropriate. You got to use this one sparingly. And, this is not to challenge, but to understand, because that's where the real growth happens. The why helps you retain the information better. See, if I had asked Michael back then after the first time that he said that, I don't know, Anne, what do the rules say? If I had said, well, why can't you tell me? Or why don't you want to tell me? And he had then explained, well, because I think you need to be able to research yourself. I think you need to take some initiative. I think you should blah, blah, blah. But he didn't. So I just did it again. Now, this one's careful. You got to be careful with this one, right? Because I'm not saying that you just ask why like your kids do when they're little and everything is why, right? We're driving to Nana's house. Why? Well, because we're going to go see her for dinner. Why? We're not saying that at all. So you want it to connect the task to the bigger picture so that it makes it more meaningful and memorable. 5, group your questions together when possible. Instead of asking every question as the question pops into your head, jot them down as you're working throughout the day. Find the answers to the ones that you can, like I talked about in step 1. But then, when possible, wait to ask the questions until you can ask them all at once instead of interrupting the attorney every 5 minutes with a phone call or an email. All right, that's your plan. Now, before you go, I have to tell you why I chose this topic for the new podcast show name and this particular topic for this episode. Here's where everything kind of comes full circle in another project that I've been working on. Because as much as I teach these frameworks and as much as I try to give paralegals a safe place to grow, I know this. Some questions, they just still feel too risky to ask a human. And some paralegals simply don't have a mentor or supportive coworker, or they're the only one in their practice area. So earlier this year, I set out to solve that problem. If you've been a listener for a while, you heard the episode a while back where I told you I was working on some big projects and I was only going to be putting out an episode a month for a good portion of this year. One of those big projects was to figure out a way that I could use AI to create a safe, judgment-free space where you could ask anything from, how do I organize a file? How do I talk to my attorney about him giving unreasonable deadlines? How do I handle something that doesn't feel ethical? But I also knew that many firms don't allow you to use ChatGPT or some of the other public-facing AI tools. So I built something private, something secure, something trained on my actual courses, my transcripts, coaching calls, frameworks, podcast episodes. And that's how An AI was born. It's An AI, the paralegal coach, which also happens to be, the URL is theparalegals.ai. So she's there for the questions that you're afraid to ask, the ones you think you should already know, the ones that would help you most in the moment. It's not meant to replace training, but supporting you through the training. Now, when I say An AI was born, it wasn't magic. Let me tell you, it was a lot of work because the first round was not good enough. So I trained her some more. And then I thought, no, I don't like that answer. You should say this instead. And then I started from scratch. I thought, okay, this is not working. And then it got better. But I still saw some room for improvement. So I trained her more. The answers were getting better, but there was still some work to do. An AI is not like ChatGPT or Claude, where you have to master prompt engineering in order to get a good response. I specifically made An AI in a way that you can just talk in normal words, ask questions like you're sitting in a coffee shop asking me questions, because you literally are. An AI is trained on all of my material. And something I didn't realize until I launched her on Friday, November 14th, was officially when I sent it out to my email list and stuff. And then I posted on LinkedIn the following Monday. But so November 14th technically is her birthday. But I didn't realize until I did that and started looking around. An AI is the first of her kind in the legal industry, at least as far as what I can tell. Unless there's other coaching tools out there like this for paralegals and legal assistants, and they're just not showing up in my Google searches, which, by the way, if that's the case, thank you, Google. Anyway, if you want to meet her, you can explore everything at theparalegals.ai. It's literally your 24/7 career coach, trained on everything I teach inside my courses, along with podcast episodes, blog articles. I've put out a lot of stuff over the last 15 years. And it's really a culmination of that. I thought, how can I better utilize all of this content and stuff I've been putting out for the last 15 years? So you can ask her questions like, how can I prepare for my annual performance review that's coming up? What do I say to an attorney who gave me a really small Christmas bonus, right? What should I say to my attorney when deadlines pile up? Or how do I set realistic goals for next year? And she's not going to give you a vague, generic answer like you'd get from those other tools that I'm not going to mention their names anymore. You're going to get an answer that I have trained this tool on. And that's the most exciting part. Not only is it a specific answer, I've also trained her to be a coach, have a conversation, and engage with you and support you in your career growth. I have to tell you this one last thing, and then I'll stop talking about her. So in the beta testing, when I only released An AI to 10 people so that I could test her and make sure that they would get the same results or better and not have me influencing it, I had several people reach out and say, I have found that I like to have conversations with her. That's why I'm calling her her now, because they started calling her and she instead of it. So it's weird. They even said, it's weird that she's not a person because I feel like she is sometimes. So anyways, when I was training and fine-tuning her to interact, I felt the same way. But I thought, well, this is just me because I've been working with her so much. And it was kind of weird, technically that it was me on the other side talking to me. Anyways, meta, weird, I know. All right, one final note as we're heading into the holiday weekend. I hope that you are able to find some time to take a break, enjoy your family, your friends, your pets, whoever or whatever is important to you. I'll see you in the next episode. Until then, bye for now.